Hi everyone, this is Satyajit. So in our last videos, we discussed about how to create a VPC, what is VPC, what is Internet Gateway, what is Subnet, what is route table, and what is routes. So if you refer this diagram, we have a VPC A we created, and inside VPC, once we created the VPC, by default it created DHCP option set, route table, and network ACL. Okay, once that created, we created two subnet. One is public subnet and another is the private subnet. So in the public subnet, to make it public, the public subnet should call as a public when we have a route to the internet gateway. Okay, so public subnet as the VPC having one route table, so both the same route table is attached to both public and private subnet, right? Once we added this route 0.0 to the internet gateway, then what happened? Both the subnet should treat as a public subnet, right? So we don't want that. We want that should be a private subnet. To make it private, what we did, we created another route table and we attached the subnet association to this subnet, and we remove this. This is we did not do that. Okay, so once that is done, so now this one is a public and this one is a private. Now our work is, we are an end user, right? We need to create two server. Okay, and to create the EC2 in detail, we will discuss in later. Now just whatever the steps I am just following, you guys has to follow the same step. Okay, and we will verify as this is public, whatever the VM will be available here, it can able to access it, means this user can able to access that. But and here also whatever the server we are going to create it, we cannot access that because that is private. Once that tested is successful, then we can verify everything is working fine. So to see the setup, if you see, there is a VPC A which created, and there are two pairs of subnet, public and private subnet. There is an internet gateway and everything is there. Now we need to create a server. So to create a EC2 instance, you just need to go to the EC2 server and click on the EC2. Okay? And there you need to create an instance. So to create an, so virtual machine, instance, these are the name, like instance is as a AWS name specific. So to create, there is instance running count is 0. So now we need to create an instance. You can just click on that and launch instance, and you need to give a name. So I can just giving public. So any good naming convention so that I can easily understand which one. So second step is AMI. So you don't worry anything now. You just randomly select one. I'm selecting Linux, and I can select the next videos. I can go for Windows. Now I'm selecting Linux. So Amazon Linux. Next one is T2 micro instance type, right? How much RAM and how much CPU. By default, whatever it is there, selected. Next is key pair. Like Linux works on key pair. Like it works on user-based authentication and also key pair-based authentications. Now, key pair required, right? We don't have any key pair. For that, you need to create a key pair and give them key pair name. Something I'm giving testings. Any name you can give it. Let's say I'm giving VPC EC2 testing something. I'm giving one key pair name. Okay, you can give a catchy name. Okay, and after that, select the pem file .pem file and create a key pair. Once you create it, it will be downloaded. I'm selecting the download folder and saving it. Once that is done, then this is the mandatory field, networking. Networking means which VPC you need to create the instance. You can just select edit. Which VPC? Now VPC A. Which subnet? Now public subnet, public A. Okay, auto assign public IP. So public IP is mandatory. Okay, the EC2 instance we called as a public if it has it is in the public subnet, and that public subnet must have a route to the internet gateway, and it must have a public IP. So two conditions should satisfy. Then only we can say one EC2 instance is a public instance. It means it should be in a public subnet. And like public, one subnet we called as public subnet when it has a route to the internet gateway. And if the instance has already in the public subnet and doesn't have any public IP, then that is also not public. We cannot access it. So for that, auto assign public IP, we need to enable it and create security group. That is you ignore it as of now, and everything remains same. Now launch instance. So it will take some time to launch instance to be available. By that meantime, I can create another instance for private. Okay, same step we will follow. We can just go for private EC2 hyphen A something, or private server A. Same AMI, you don't do anything, everything, and same key pair. So same key can be used for all also, but as a best practices, depending on the applications level, you can create the key pair. But here I'm just selecting the same key pair, and you need to go for the network settings, and their change is to VPC A, and instead of public subnet, make it as private subnet. Okay, so private A, and for private subnet doesn't require any public IP. But for testing, as we are doing testing, whether it will work or not, so I am again enabling it. But generally, private subnet doesn't require any public IP. Okay, so once that is done, everything will remain same, and that's it. I need to launch an instance. Once this instance is created, now I have two instances. If you go click on the instance, or you can call as virtual machines, right? So the two instance is in, one is in running state, another one is the pending state. Okay, so let's wait for some more time when both the instance to be available. As already the public server is running, let us go and we will test it out whether it is work or not. Okay, and this public server having the public IP, and verify the subnet. If you go to the networking, there is a subnet, a public subnet A, and now private subnet also running. You can just go to the private subnet, and private subnet also have public IP, and networking is a private subnet. Now we will verify to log in from outside. Okay, so now public server, how you will log in? To get the login, see, if you go to connect, right? So already command is there. If you go for SSS client, already command is there. What command? You need to change the permissions, right? To change the permissions, already I'm in the command prompt. Okay, and I will just use this command, because in the download folder my key is there. So now okay, 1 minute. I will just verify the key is there or not. VPC, 1 minute. By that meantime, I'll just pause the videos and okay. So here, if you do that ls ls hyphen l, and you can just grep VPC hyphen EC2 hyphen testing.pm. So that file is already present, and I already changed the permissions. You just need to chmod 400, all the steps is there. It is, you need to change the permissions. After that, you need to just use this command. Okay, so to use the command, you can just put ssh hyphen I and specify the key. This is your main important file. This is the key, and EC2 user @ this is the IP of your server. Okay, after that, you hit an enter. Once you hit an enter, if you see, there is already the login prompt. I'm able to log in. If you see the IP address 10.0.0.026, you can just verify the public server IP is 10.0.0.26. It means I can able to access to the public server, because, and in each server, you might ask questions, right? Why its private IP is required? So private IP is the static IP. This IP, it is not going to change. If you terminate the instance, then only the IP will go, or else the instance will be there. Okay, so that is the private IP, and this is the public IP. So private IP required communications inside the VPC. Okay, to outside, now I am trying to access the server from outside the VPC, right? For that reason, I require the public IP. So that one is public IP, one is private IP. Now I'm able to access to the public server. Now how I will access to the private server? Let's say the private server also having this public IP and the same key. Let me try to using that. Okay, I can just exit from here, and same command I will use ssh hyphen I VPC testing pim, and here default user is EC2 user. So this is an Amazon Linux AMI, which we'll discuss in the when we will go start EC2, that time we will discuss. And now EC2 instance, then @ and the IP address. This is the public IP of the private. Now once I hit enter, right, it is not going to work. Okay, after that it will say that connections timeout because it cannot reach, as this is a private server. But the same way, if we do it for the public, it immediately connected. Why? Because that is publicly accessible. You can able to access it directly. Okay, now it is not going to work. If you enter, if you do control C something, it will not going to work because you cannot able to access it. But whereas if you go for the public one, right, immediately it will connect, immediately you will able to reach it. So now our assumptions and whatever this setup we have created, that is correct. It means now we can able to, from this user, you can able to reach to this server, public key server, and I cannot reach to this private server. Okay, so now you might ask question, then what is the use of creating private server if I cannot able to access it? Okay, so the answer for that is any server, though may be private or public, any server or any resources can communicate each other within the VPC, right? The VPC is a your own area you reserve, right? Inside that VPC, anyone can access each other, though may private or public, whatever it is. But only outside, whenever you're trying to access, only the public server you can access it. So generally, we cannot make our all the resources public, which is very sensitive and which is not secure. We cannot make all of our resources public. Okay, so for that reason, we create a private server. Okay, our application should be privately accessible and it cannot be accessible outside. It can only be accessible within the network or within the VPC. So now I am able to connect to the public one. Now how from the public one I can able to access to the private one? Okay, I will just try it. Okay, so for that, the key is mandatory. What I will do, I will just open this key, a VPC testing.pem key, and I will just copy this key. You can also same way you follow it, copy it, and after that you can log into this server, and inside this server you can just place the key, because without key you cannot access it, right? The same name, VPC EC2 testing.pem, and once that you paste the key. Once the key is done, save and exit from there, and check the permissions. The permissions you need to do 400. So once the permission is done, then we are good. The key is there. Now let us try to access within. So now I am inside the public server. Okay, now use the same command. So connect and use the same command and try to access it. Now if you do it, okay, so then again, why it is not working? It means I need to specify the private IP, because I cannot specify the public IP. Let me give the private IP of the private server. So the private IP is 10.0.1.1.6. See, this is a random IP DHCP is giving. I given this is 10.0.1.0/24. So from that, it is taking the random one. Now let us do that. Instead of this public IP, I can just give the private IP. Once I hit enter, it's saying, are you sure you want to connect? Yes. And if you see, I can able to access. See the IP address earlier, it is 10.0.0.26. It means this is the public one. And next one is 10.0.1.163. This is the private one. So within the VPC, I can able to connect it. Like I just connected to the public, and from that public, I connected to the private. Like I require some medium. So that medium is called as a jump server or bastion server. It means I cannot connect directly to the private server. To connect to the private server, I require some medium, which means I need to connect to this medium server, and from that medium, I can connect to the private server. So that medium server or that mediator is called as a jump server, or we call as a bastion server. So now here, this public server, we can call as a bastion server. Okay. So now another one thing we need to understand. So now this is my public one, 10.0.0.26. If I hit here ping google.com, so it is going to work. So now I'm getting the response. As it is a Linux, I cannot open to the browser. I can only hit the public ping google.com. So this is working fine for me because it has internet gateway attached. It is working fine. Let me log into the private IP, private server. So now 10.0.1.163. This is the private one. If I will hit ping google.com, it is not working. It is not taking the 64-byte response. It's not coming. It means this is private. It cannot work the internet. So then how I will access it? So one way is if I will attach the internet gateway. If you attach the internet gateway, then that will behave as a public. Internet will work, but that will remain, that will be treated as a public. But I want my server should be remain private. It means it cannot be accessible from outside. But once I connect it to the private server, from there, I can able to access to the internet. So how these things can be done, we can discuss in the next videos. So there is some terminology called NAT gateway. We will understand in next videos. So here today we understood like how to create EC2 server. And once the EC2 server is created, how we are accessing to that EC2 server. And we know like the public server, we cannot, the private server, we cannot access it from outside. And within the VPC, anyone can communicate with each other. So for that, we require some mediator to access to the private server. So that mediator is nothing but called a jump server or bastion server. Okay. And we are able to connect to the private server. After that, we verified we cannot access the internet into the private server. So to access the internet, we know we have internet gateway. If we attach internet gateway, that will behave as a public. But our requirement is it should be remain as private, but how we can able to access the internet. Okay, so that we will discuss in the next videos. By that time, if you have any queries, any doubt, put comments. I will read it and I will help you out. Thank you for watching.